Well, everybody, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, to be in Germany, and have the opportunity to talk with you about plasma and pet health and kind of the new research that we have been doing in canine, looking at both microbiome and mobility. So those of you that do not know what plasma is, let me give you a little explanation. We essentially are a company, APC is our company, and we collect blood, and then we fractionate it into plasma or the red cells. So essentially we're working with producing a high protein ingredient. It has a good amino acid profile for formulation, so when you're formulating it into your diets, it helps in that manner. It's providing nutrition and health benefits, and we'll talk more about the details of the health benefits here. But it also provides physical functionality on the processing side. I will not cover that today, but that also is an opportunity in utilizing this product. So plasma, how does it impact health? Think of it as a complex mixture. There's a lot of different functional proteins that are in this product. It helps to support the immune system, helps support the overall well-being of the animal. This effect is very positive. It's broad, and it's multi-systemic. So it's not just a gut effect, and as you will see that from the presentation today, that not only do we impact the gut, but we're also impacting the animal systemically. So when you think about all the different compounds, these are compounds, I mean, when you take a blood sample and from an animal, you can measure all these things. That's what we're collecting, and that's what's active within our product. So when we think about how it's connecting to the immune system, I want you to think about the common mucosal immune system. We have done a lot of research, background on this in model species and livestock species, and here we have seen how it helps to maintain the intestinal integrity, so to keep the intestine in a better state so that animals are able to do better. We also see it during different challenges, and I will highlight some of that research today with you. And like I said, having that systemic effect. So we started working in models looking at it in the gut, and then we moved into respiratory, skeletal, but there's this common mucosal immune system, and so you think about the intestine is a very large immune organ. There's a lot of communication, and so that's how, as we think about orally feeding these proteins and having an impact not only in the gut, but systemically. Now, when plasma got going, a lot of it was utilized in wet pet food. And as I said, there's the functional side, the technological and processing. This is one part of it, and that's where it really got known. And it's been used for 30 plus years in all these different forms, helping to make the chunks. It's there for helping its gelling capacity, its digestibility, water holding, fat emulsification. All of these are the benefits that you see. So people were familiar with it there, but it's not only the benefits in wet pet food. And that's what today we're going to talk about more in the dry application. All of these different products up here contain plasma. These are just researching out on the internet, finding out which ones have it, and you can see we've got anywhere from different gummies, complete and balanced food, meat sticks, snacks, baked biscuits, different toppers and things. These are all products and where you can incorporate these proteins into dry applications. To give you a good background here, this is a recent publication kind of highlighting the different areas that we're talking about. As I mentioned, the processing in both the wet, very well known in that area. Dry, it also has processing benefits, thinking about how we can improve kibble quality, reduce fines. It's giving you a protein credit when you're thinking about formulation. Nutritionally, again, a very high quality protein that is giving you good digestibility and amino acid profile. And along with it, that we're going to dive into more now onto the health benefits where we're helping to support, improve the overall gut health and support the immune system. So I bring this up just to let you know this is a very good overview of the product. So thinking about what have we done? I can't cover all these different areas. This is a very well-researched product. 700 plus publications, either by ourselves or independent of us, of other groups that he evaluated these proteins in both model species, livestock species, and today we will cover the more recent work in canine. But we've seen improvements in intestinal health and immune function as we think about how we're shifting the microbiome. We look at gut health. We have been working, we have publications and research in a mouse model where we have shown improvements in aging and in cognition in animals that are going through that. You think about aging, it's a stress period, and how we can improve that, improve the overall cognition of the animals. Behavior, digestibility. I'm not going to go into detail here, but we've seen a lot of improvements. Not only is it a very digestible ingredient, but it also helps to improve the overall digestibility of the diet. We have data on that in both wet and dry applications. So if you're also thinking about that in the type of products that you are making, consider this also having that function on the digestibility. Another area is thinking about exertion and exercise, and I'll hit on that. Oral health, again, helping to support the overall animal in that, and then travel stress, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So let's go into talking about some of the history here. As I said, all of that research we've done, we're not going to cover it all today, but when we think about how is these proteins working, we started off doing this research in rats and mice. This was a study we published back in 2006, looking at how these proteins are impacting the intestinal health. So here we were looking at incorporating it into the diet of these rats. We did challenge them. We were simulating some intestinal inflammation because we were trying to evaluate what does it do. So here, what we found in publishing this is published research where we were incorporating it and showing how the challenge occurred in the animals, but the animals that were challenged and offered these proteins within their diet, we were able to help reduce the deterioration that was happening of the inflammation and help to maintain what you would call as the tight junction protein. So helping to maintain the intestinal integrity of these animals. So that's why we talk about improving the intestinal barrier function. In this same model, which is called the SEB model, we then also wanted to not only look at how it's maintaining the gut, but also starting to look at inflammatory markers. So the markers we were looking at here was looking at like cytokine profiles, etc. And there's a lot of different measurements in these different publications. This one we published in 2010. So here again, we were challenging the rats, looking at it and showing how we were with the challenge and feeding the plasma compared to the control. We were able to show that the challenge did cause an increase in pro-inflammatory cytokines, indicating inflammation. When they were fed plasma, we saw less of the pro-inflammatory, and what we shifted it towards was more of what you would call the anti-inflammatory profile, indicated by enhancing IL-10, which is an anti-inflammatory cytokine. So again, we saw a nice improvement there, impacting inflammatory response. Another question we get a lot is, okay, you're having this impact on the gut, what about the microbiome? So this was work that we published in looking at mice, incorporating it into the diet, and looking at how we're shifting the microbiome. This is a more recent one, published in 2020, where again, we incorporated it into the diet and showing shifts to beneficial bacteria. And then one last thing I want to give you the history before I get into the canine data is we talked about exercise and mobility. Why did we do that research looking at mobility in dogs? Well, as we think about how these proteins are working, of having a systemic effect, one of the natural stressors of a lot of our animals and pets is, movement as they get older. And so we had done this work in horses, where we were using a horse as a model to look at movement and natural stress. So this one was an exercise model. It was the Texas A&M Cavalry, which is like the military horses on the supplement. So we were providing the proteins into a pelleted supplement and then putting them through their exercise, their training classes, and looking at how are they getting better, are they having better knee range of motion, stride length, and we did see that, and we saw as we put in higher levels of the proteins, we saw a better response. So this was the background we had as we started to look at understanding these proteins. So then as we started to bring this information out, a lot of people are asking us, well, what about the dog, the cat? You've got great data, but let's see what happens. So we started looking at doing research in species. So as I said, we had this peer-reviewed. There's a lot of them as we look at impacting inflammation, having a positive impact on the intestine. We know in livestock species too, as we just saw in the horse, we do see a linear response. So you put in more, you get a better effect. And so as we think about the importance on the dog, when you can improve that gut balance and overall intestine, there's a lot of things such as skin and coat, mobility. All these things are beneficial. So we contracted with the University of Illinois to do this research. We had 3 goals. One is confirm the effect that I just talked to you about that we saw in mice and rats. Number 2 is we get a lot of questions about, okay, you're putting it in there, but what about the extrusion process too? So we designed the study to ask that question. We've seen benefits under the pelleted horses, but we wanted to see further in the specific target species. And finally, the question comes up, what level? Do we still have a linear response like we did in the livestock species and in that horse example that I gave you? So this is what we looked at. This one paper just recently published in December of last year, and the full data on this study is available in this article. So how did we do this? We had 4 diets. We had a control. We put another diet of extruding the kibble and then putting 4% plasma on the outside. Very difficult to do. Did it for this research process. Don't recommend trying to put that much on the outside. But we wanted it the same level as what we were putting on the inside, which was 4% also in the mash prior to extrusion. And then we did 8% in the mash prior to extrusion. And as we did this, we were looking at all these different measurements in the dogs: digestibility, fecal output, fecal metabolites, serum metabolites, and the microbiome shift. Now, I'm not going to go through all treatments with you. What I can tell you is the 2 4% inside versus outside, pretty similar response. And that's what we were answering that question. So there's 2 different analyses here. And generally, we recommend, as you're putting in the higher levels, putting it inside the kibble. So I'm going to go through the linear analysis with you. If you have questions about the other ones, feel free to pull the paper, contact me. Both are in the publication, both analysis. So for today, I'm just going to talk about the linear effect. So first of all, we're looking at digestibility. I just told you we improved digestibility. In this study, we did not pick up a significant difference. You can see very nice digestibility. We essentially had a very good control, which is what we wanted, to have a good digestibility to see how the effect is. So we see a nice improvement of about 85% digestibility, so we're hitting the biological response. But then as we start looking into the effect, now we're looking at the phenols and indoles, which are fecal metabolites, and we see a significant reduction in this, which is indicating less fecal over. These are the aromatic biogenic amines. So we're seeing a nice, one of the examples, the 3-methyl-indole was significantly reduced, and then total phenols and indoles was significantly reduced in a very linear response. We looked at the metabolites, looking at short-chain fatty acids. Again, seeing a nice significant increase in short-chain fatty acids, which is indicating, again, better maintenance and gut health. And then as we look at the microbiome, if you've ever done microbiome work, you know there's a lot of variation associated with it. We did pick up a tendency of a linear response in lactobacillus, but the big picture we're looking at here is, are we seeing shifts in the microbiome that are supporting the effect that we saw in the metabolites, which is the short-chain fatty acids and the phenolics? And yes, that is what we see. These are the ones associated with the short-chain fatty acids, and they're shifted up, which helps support why we saw the outcome in the short-chain fatty acids. Another thing we looked at was taking blood samples on these animals to prove that they are healthy animals. And interestingly enough, we also saw a significant reduction in blood urea nitrogen, which indicates better protein metabolism. So again, a very positive effect. We have seen this in other species. So again, helping to support the overall animal. Another thing was looking at fecal IgA in these dogs. We see a nice increase. It was not significantly different, but seeing a nice numeric improvement. And so as we concluded from this, we saw the increase in the short-chain fatty acids. We're shifting the metabolites. We're seeing an improvement in the gut microbiome. We're seeing this improved mucosal immunity as indicated by what we saw with the fecal IgAs. And then finally, it's a linear response. You want a bigger response, put in more. It all depends on what level you want. So that's what we saw from that study. We then moved into looking at mobility in senior dogs. Here we contracted with China Agricultural University. And again, we were wanting to confirm the effect on a mobility model. Understand it, again, in senior animals, the digestibility, because a lot more senior animals have more digestive issues, so could we impact that too? And then finally confirm the positive impacts that we have seen again in the other model species on the inflammatory markers. This one has also just published. It's published a couple of months ago in the Journal of Animal Science. And so what we had senior dogs greater than 7 years of age, a control, and then this time putting 4% plasma inside an extruded kibble. They were randomized for their lameness, age, and the one thing I want to remind you, on the previous study, we saw those responses in healthy animals, which is a big deal to be able to see that big of a response. Here we're looking at an animal that's a little bit more stressed, but also a lot of different breeds and age. We got different sexes here. We had 12 dogs per treatment in this group. So a big group looking at it and then looking at digestibility, serum markers, lameness scoring, etc. So what did we see? We got here's the population. We've got 24 animals, roughly 7.5 years of age, body weight of 22 kilos, an OA score, which is kind of an osteoarthritis scoring, kind of scoring how their mobility was, about 3.5. Males and females, making sure we did not have them on NSAIDs or other type of things that could be impacting the study, and then followed them for 42 days. Now in this one, we did see a nice improvement in crude protein digestibility. Again, we had about an 85% digestibility in the dogs for the control, which is a good digestibility, but we were able to shift it up further by having these plasma proteins. And again, I think about probably helping overall, supporting the overall gut as you think about senior animals. As we start to look at inflammatory markers, we did see a significant reduction in IL-1 beta, which is a pro-inflammatory cytokine. And then we also saw a shift significantly higher in IL-10, again, which is an anti-inflammatory, similar to what we have seen in the other species. Along with this model, we also took looking at markers of joint inflammation, the metalloproteinases. Seeing a reduction in this is a positive thing. So again indicating improvement of why we would see as we continue to look at lameness, having less issues there. We looked at the antioxidant capacity in these animals too. MDA going down, SOD, the going up are all positive, are showing the overall improvement in the antioxidant capacity on these animals. And then what does it all mean? What we're hoping to see? Lameness, less lameness, which is exactly what we saw. So we have the markers indicating it, and the outcome that what the pet owner would see too is having less lameness in their animals that are having mobility issues. So to summarize this study, as we look at it, we had neutral or improved digestibility. We were, again, reducing the pro-inflammatory and increasing the anti-inflammatory like what you have seen in other species. We're improving the antioxidant properties, improving joint markers, and reducing lameness. So this data is, again, further supporting all the years of research that we have done showing how we're impacting the animals. So as we think about applications for this data, like I said, in species now, which we get a lot of questions about, is confirming all of that other species and model research. So you think about where to put it, thinking about senior animals, healthy aging, if you're looking to shift the microbiome, if you're helping for intestinal tract, a lot of different uses along with that you're getting from the health side, but then don't forget also having the other functional side for helping to maintain good kibble quality and also improving palatability. So we're back to where I started. Now you see why we talk about all these different areas of having an impact on the animal. And with that, I'd like to invite you to learn more about these proteins and what they can do. You can visit our website. We've got different things on YouTube channel that you can look at and learn about the different things. You can follow us on LinkedIn, or you can contact us via email. But also, I'd invite you to come over to our booth. We are in Hall 7, booth 7172, so be glad to talk with you more in detail about these applications with plasma. Thank you.